Hello and welcome to Nuts and Bolts, the Job Search, informational sessions brought to you by the Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia Employment Resources Consortium, otherwise known as POWER. POWER consists of 11 law schools in our region dedicated to promoting best practices in law school career development and assisting in the career success of all of our students and alumni within their legal communities and within the profession as a whole. The Nuts and Bolts the Job Search series is a collaborative effort to educate our students and alumni on some professionalism basics to supplement your legal studies and help you develop into a well-rounded lawyer. My name is Elisa Benedict O'Brien, and I am the Assistant Dean of Career Services at the University of Akron School of Law in Akron, Ohio. Today's session will cover 5 questions with a hiring attorney. We are so glad you're here. Let's get started. So I'm here today with Karen Adinolfi, a shareholder with Roetzel Andress in the Akron, Ohio office. Thanks for being here, Karen.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
So our first question for you is, how might law students best prepare for an interview?
Sure, I think preparation is important. You don't want to go into an interview uneducated or unprepared. The obvious place to start is the firm's website of the firm that you'll be interviewing with. Firms today tend to have very elaborate, very sophisticated websites, and you'll get a lot of information about their practice areas, their client base. You can look at hopefully have the names of the attorneys you'll be looking at. You can see what they do, what activities they're engaged in, that kind of thing. But there's a wealth of information outside of the website. Things like learn about the organizations and causes that the firm or the individual attorneys support. What are the trends in the practice areas? Look at the firm's alerts and client materials that they send out and they post on their website. That will show what's kind of trending in the areas that the firm practices in. Look on Westlaw. Look for cases of the attorneys that you'll be interviewing with or the firm itself, and see what kind of cases are out there, and also provide some fodder for conversation. And just as a practical matter, put yourself together before the interview, especially if you're doing it remotely. It's very easy to kind of just sit down and go with it. But you want to just pretend you're in the office. Dress appropriately, make sure your background is professional or at least not offensive, and treat it like you are in person. It is difficult to interview remotely, so you do need to prepare yourself a little bit for that.
Great advice. So our next question for you is, how can a candidate stand out to you and your firm?
Sure. Obviously candidates come to us with sometimes very similar resumes. We have certain criteria for who we interview, but even if you're not interviewing with a firm that has that criteria, it tends to be, the same relatives, same grade point range, rank range, that kind of thing. So you do want to set yourself apart. If you have interesting or non-traditional experience, whether it's work experience or your academic career, highlight that. Because again, sometimes we see like a lot of the same types of college majors and programs come through. And if somebody has something that's what I would call non-traditional, or if you have graduate experience, that's always going to set you apart. So make sure that you're highlighting that on your resume and in the interview. Things that allow you to portray yourself as showing initiatives. Have you started any nonprofits? Have you started any projects in the real world, in the law school, whatever it is? Highlight those, because again, we're looking for attorneys who are self-starters, who know how to take initiative, who know how to seize an opportunity. And when you highlight things like that, it's usually very impressive. If you have clinical experience through your law school, highlight that. A lot of times we get candidates who don't have a lot of or any work experience at all, and a clinical experience, especially one that you can expound on during your interview, will grab attention, because those tend to be very hands-on, very practical, and provide you experience that others don't have. And your extracurriculars. Obviously, if you're doing law review or trial team or moot court, you want to talk about that. But if there are other extracurriculars, say like the Immigration Law Society or something like that we don't necessarily see every day, again, it shows a little bit of devotion to the practice of law, and it's something that is very attractive, I think, to interviewers.
Very helpful. So you've shared a lot of great information with us so far about how students can prepare for the interview and then how they can stand out to your firm. Can you tell us, because it's a question that students often ask us, is what types of questions should I be asking the interviewer? So what are some thoughtful questions or topics that law students have raised with you in interviews in the past that you can guide us on?
Sure. And I think you always want to ask questions. There's nothing more awkward than getting to the end of an interview and the interviewing asks you, do you have any questions? You're like, nope, I've heard everything, which is never going to be true.
Right.
So I was thinking about some of the questions I've been asked in the past that I think show that you really have prepared for the interview. One of the big ones that I've seen more often lately is, what are the firm's diversity and inclusion efforts? Typically, if the firm has those efforts, they will put them on their website. They'll highlight them in some way. For some firms, it's really not something they do very much of. Other firms, they're very committed to it. So ask about those, especially if you are in a group like you're a woman or you're a student of color. Ask about that. I think, sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to look like I'm going to rock the boat or anything like that. But that shows that, one, that you've done your homework. And two, it shows that you would be committed to that environment, that would be something that you would welcome and you would thrive in. And I don't think in this day and age, I don't think any firm would hold that against anybody, to assume that they would come in and want to make all these changes. Don't assume that. I think that's a very good question to ask.
Excellent.
I think you ask about associate mentoring and development. Does the firm have a program? Is it just ad hoc, like as people come in, we kind of take care of it? If they have a program, ask about it. Is there training? Is there hands-on experience? Is there a mentoring aspect to it? How do you develop your associates? I think shows, one, a lot of commitment to the process and commitment to the firm. If you're interviewing, now or in the next couple of months, ask how the pandemic has affected the firm's operations. Is everybody remote? Is everybody back? What's the firm sort of taken from that experience? I think a lot of firms are very willing to talk about that because we've all been affected in some way. And bigger firms like mine, have had some unique challenges. So I think asking about that, one, recognizes that we're not in a vacuum here, that there are actually real world implications to these things.
Right.
And I think the term firm culture is something you should ask about as well. Firms, if they have a very poor culture, they're probably not going to highlight that. But if you have a firm with a really good culture, like I believe my firm does, we will talk for hours about it. And so you want to test the enthusiasm of your interviewer for that, because that gives you a little glimpse into what daily life might be like.
Right. Those are all really excellent and very relevant suggestions. So the next question is, and you already talked to us a little bit about how candidates can stand out. A lot of the students that are going to be viewing this are probably going to participate at some point in career fairs or recruiting programs on their campuses, and they may be applying to a variety of different firms. How can they show a firm that they are genuinely interested in that particular firm?
Yeah, I think doing your homework is the key to that. Again, you'll likely know who you'll be interviewing with. Even better if it's an area that you're interested in, be able to talk to them about that practice area. What are the trends? How has it changed? Because to me, that shows real interest. That's not just tell me how much I'm going to make or where my office is going to be.
Right.
I think that shows, one, that you've taken the time to understand, try and understand what the practice area is like, what the firm is like, and that your questions that you ask will show that genuine interest. I think if you just ask really the basic things, again, you look like you're just checking the box of, yeah, I interviewed with this firm.
Right.
But if you're truly interested, do the homework. I think you ask about very specific things. Look at the alerts and the sort of the things that they're issuing or they're publishing. Those show the interests of the firm and its clients. And if you can pinpoint an area that you can talk with this specific attorney about, even better. Again, I think that's very impressive that in the course of your busy studies, you've taken the time to understand that. And I think anybody would appreciate that. And I think you talk about hypothetically your future in the firm context. If your area of practice is something like, I'm going to look at my firm, is like family law or criminal law, that's not going to show that you're really interested because we don't practice in those areas. But if you're interested, say, in environmental law or real estate law, again, learn what you can about that and try and tailor some of your conversations during those interviews to those areas and see if it's something that you can envision yourself practicing in that area. Everyone knows that's not set in stone what you're going to do.
Right.
But if you're really committed to a career in criminal defense, again, that's going to be a real disconnect between what you're interviewing for and what you really want to do.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. And our final question, the thank you note. Do you have a preference for email or a handwritten note after an interview? And does it impact for you the evaluation of that particular candidate?
The way it would affect my evaluation is if I didn't get one.
Uh-huh.
It's a professional courtesy. And I have sent thank you notes in my career to, meetings I've had with prospective clients, that kind of thing. It's a well-known practice. And if you don't send one, I think that reflects badly. As to whether email or handwritten, I don't know that makes a difference. I prefer a handwritten one because to me that shows a little more effort than just pounding out an email.
Right.
But I will say that I have gotten emails that have been, wonderfully written, very carefully written, and I appreciate those as much. So however you do it, just make sure you do it.
Bottom line, send the thank you note. Great.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you so much again to Karen Adinolfi of Roetzel Andress. This has been wonderfully helpful. We appreciate you sharing your tips with us today.
I'm happy to help, but good luck to everybody.